everyone. Welcome to Be Happy Now Mindfulness for Women. Today we are going to be talking about how to banish work stress and general life stress. So I'm really looking forward to hearing how you've been going over the last week and to sharing some new techniques with you. Let's get started by having a look at what is stress. What is the experience of stress? Now, it's different for everybody, but generally it's a sense of worry. There might be an experience of anxiety, which is, a feeling of being uncomfortable, being concerned, being uptight. We all really know what it is, don't we? But we might not be able to describe the sensations of it. Pressure is another way to describe stress, just a sense of internal pressure. There's pressure on us from outside, like we feel there's a weight over us that we have to perform about something, or that there's an outcome that's becoming stressful at some point. And strain, we feel strained to be able to achieve what we want to, or strained to get the outcome that we're trying to get. Perhaps it's a sense of overwhelm. If you are under pressure or strain or feel anxious for a long time, you'll probably get to a state of overwhelm, which is when it really feels like it's all too much. And you feel like maybe you can't even cope with it all. It's just too much. If the overwhelm continues, you will experience burnout. And burnout is really when you just can't function anymore. It's now a recognized condition from work stress in particular and life stress, and it's just a state in which you can't function, your nervous system is overwhelmed, and the only way to recover from it is to stop, to actually take time out and to be able to repair your nervous system and be able to relax a bit. Now, if you don't reduce your stress levels and burnout continues, or you have very extreme stress over a short period of time or a long period of time, what happens next is breakdown. And breakdown can look like a lot of different things. It can be when somebody can't stop crying, is incredibly emotional. It can be all the way up to, an episode where somebody needs to be institutionalized or hospitalized and given medication. So there's various levels. Now, if someone has a breakdown and doesn't get the help that they need, or they are exposed to very, very traumatic, stressful experiences, it can turn into post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, which is an extreme form for sure, but I think it's gained more popular recognition because a lot of the war veterans are now known to be suffering from PTSD, which is an extreme form of stress. PTSD is simply when someone re-experiences the trauma. So they might have nightmares, they might have flashbacks, any little thing reminds them of the trauma. For example, if somebody was in a war experience and there was a lot of bombing or loud noises, just shutting a car door might give somebody a panic attack. It's not that they have to be exposed to warlike situations. It's actually the noise triggers it, or the memories, or anything that looks like that on the TV. Or there's a lot of different ways that it gets triggered, and it's pretty extreme and requires long-term rehabilitation. So stress is a very large component of workplace absenteeism. It costs governments in healthcare billions of pounds a year. It's a recognized serious problem in this country and other countries around the world. And it's something that isn't necessarily attended to before it happens. So people tend to go to a doctor and get antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication when they're already at a point where they're nearly at burnout. Whereas what we're going to talk about tonight is how you can prevent stress from ever becoming a problem in your life, and how you can deal with it when you do feel stressed so that it doesn't ever accelerate into a worse problem. So I'd love to hear from you and find out how often you feel stressed. So I'm just going to put a poll up on the screen. Okay, so how often do you feel stressed? you can just pick up your mouse and click one of the following. So every day, which would mean, at some time during the day that it's something very common for you. Sometimes, occasionally, rarely, or never. Just picking up your mouse and voting. There's a few more people to vote, so I'll give you a little bit more time. So remember any of those symptoms that I mentioned before in the previous slide. Anything from a sense of anxiety to a sense of overwhelm. Just another couple of people to vote. Great. Okay. Wow. Okay. I'll share the results with you. Wow, look at that. 50% of you are saying every day, and 50% of you are saying sometimes. I think that's amazing, okay? And I'm really, really glad that you're on this call, because I'm going to give you some exercises and tools tonight to help reduce this, because I think this is pretty indicative of the modern woman's life, isn't it? And the studies show that women experience more stress than men, and more depression than men, and more mental conditions than men. And when they look at why, it seems to be often because we have many roles in our life. We have many areas. We're looking after children often, the home. We're often going out to work as well. And we have many roles that we're trying to juggle. So yes, particularly for women, I'm very, very, very glad to be sharing this information with you because of particularly these results that you just showed me. Wow, thank you. All right. So what creates stress? Let's have a look at this. What actually creates the experience of stress? First of all, it can come from external demands being greater than your internal resources. So I'll talk about both of these sides in a moment in detail, but external demands are basically things or people that are demanding things of you that is just a little bit too much for what you can cope with. There's also internal stress, which I'm saying is optional because I truly believe it is. I don't think that internally generated stress or anxiety is necessary. And when you learn the tools, and particularly mindfulness tools, you'll probably find that it's very easy to reduce your anxiety and stress levels because you know how to take your thoughts less seriously. So let's have a look first of all at the details around external demands. So when the number of decisions or actions or bits of information that you're required to deal with exceeds your capacity to deal with them. What I mean by that is that in a day, let's say that you're at work, you have to do a lot of decisions. When you're at home, you have to make decisions such as, what do I feed the kids for supper? What shall I wear today? Which way shall I go to work? When I get to work, do I photocopy now, or do I send that email now, or do I do something else first? Should I talk to the boss now, or what should I do? Like every day, every moment of the day, often we're dealing with little decisions. And when we have too many decisions on our plate, too many that we can deal with, we start feeling stressed and overwhelmed. As well as actions as well. If you have a list of, 25 tasks to do today, and you feel like that's too much for you, that will again allow you to feel a sense of stress. Or bits of information. You probably all had the experience of, I don't know, looking at maybe a spreadsheet, or looking at a complicated task list, or perhaps looking at a long article with lots of information that you've got to collate afterwards, and thinking, I don't know how to deal with all that information, it's too much. So when you have that experience, it's simply that there's something outside of you that you're trying to achieve that is too much for the resources that you have at the moment. The level of stress that you experience depends on a few things. First of all, it depends on the resilience of your nervous system. Now, the resilience of your nervous system means how strong your nervous system is to deal with the stresses of life. Some people can deal with very little, and some people can deal with a huge amount. And it seems to be that people have different natural nervous system kind of default levels, if that makes sense. So some people have very finely tuned nervous systems. Some people have much more resilient nervous systems. And you probably know people with very finely tuned nervous systems. Um, you can often see it in their facial structure. They're very finely boned sometimes. They look sensitive. They react to things. They're often very emotional. Um, Little tiny things upset them a lot. They're just very sensitive, and they can't deal with a lot of challenge. Other people, and again, sometimes you can see this in the physiology of people, that they have more solid physiology. And that's reflected in the fact that they're more robust emotionally and mentally as well. Their nervous system is stronger. They can cope with a whole lot more before they start to crack, before the cracks show or they get overwhelmed. So it really depends on your own nervous system. And that, of course, depends on your genetics. It depends on your upbringing, depends on how you've handled stress in your past in terms of what tools you had. And it just depends on how you deal with it day to day, whether you've allowed yourself to get overwhelmed at some point. So that's your nervous system component. There's also your hormonal cycles. And I'm sure you're all aware as women that, if you're in the premenstrual phase, you have much less resilience and you get stressed much more easily. If you drop a cup on the floor, it can be a cause for screaming and running from the room in hysterics. Whereas at other times in a month, in your cycle, maybe it's just, oh, dropped a cup. And it's just, I'll just get another one. It doesn't matter. So hormones can play a big role in the amount of stress that you can cope with. So please, ladies, if you feel that you're very stressed, just make sure that you're aware of your cycle and where you are in your cycle. And then take extra care of yourself if you're in that premenstrual cycle. Your health. If you're not well, if you've got a cold or flu, you have much less capacity to perform. So if you're under the weather, if you have health issues, or if you're in pain, your stress levels will increase because you're not able to deal with as much. Your emotional status. If you have a lot on your plate, if you're upset about things, if you're grieving, if you're experiencing, relationship challenges and you're very emotional about them, if something difficult's happening at work, if there's any situation that's going on that you're feeling emotional about, and you're already full of emotions, then if one little extra thing happens, you'll probably break down or get really upset or just burst into tears. So that can really play a part on how stressed you feel as well. Now, as well as all those things, when you can't deal with the number of demands on you, we're looking purely at the external for this, these couple of slides. When you can't deal with the number of demands, you need to do something different because it's just that your nervous system can't actually deal with that demand. You need to change something. So it's not okay to just sit there and accept and go, oh, I'm working too hard and I can't actually cope with it. I'm getting more and more run down. You need to change something. So some of the things that you can change, and I'm sure you've also got your own ideas as well, is that you need to change the situation. That might mean asking for a holiday. It might mean changing your hours or changing the number of days you work. It might be changing projects. It might be having a talk to the boss and saying, hey, look, I need a different office for myself rather than sharing. It could look like all sorts of things. It could be a home stress. It could be getting a babysitter in at home, or getting a partner or husband to look after the children more of the time, or getting a cleaner in or a gardener or anything like that. Set boundaries. Now, for those of you who identified with having a strong pleaser in the last call, I think last week or the week before, we talked about it a little bit. If you find that you're saying yes when you actually mean no, and you're doing that at a regular interval, you'll find that your resilience gets less and less over time, because what's happening is that you're doing too much. You're not able to say no when your body wants you to say no, or your emotional state wants you to say no, and therefore you're getting run down, you're doing too much, you're giving too much emotional support to other people, and you're not taking care of yourself. So if you do feel stressed, make sure that you check on your boundaries and please address them and set them if you haven't been clear about it. Part of that is saying no. So if you do have a strong pleaser, if you have a strong pusher and you always just take on everything that people offer you, then learn how to say no. It's a very important two-letter word. So practice saying no in a polite, friendly way and find the person another outcome, another possibility for getting that thing done. But just say, no, that's not going to work for me right now. Let's brainstorm a way to get it done for you. Delegate, delegate, delegate. Especially the ladies with their own businesses, please delegate, outsource. If you're struggling to do stuff that's not in your flow as a business owner, it's just causing you unnecessary stress, and it doesn't have to be expensive to get things outsourced. So whether it's marketing, social media, copywriting, whatever your business is, look at delegating those things that you find stressful and get someone else to do them who loves to do it and could do it all day for you. And upskill. Well, seriously, consider it. If you find the demands too much for you that are on your plate at the moment, maybe it's because you don't know how to do it well enough. So you might need some more training. You might need to study a bit. You might need to go to your boss and say, hey, look, I'm sorry, I've been faking it, but actually I really don't know how to do this task. Can you please help me? So upskill, get some training and get some support and help with what it is that you need to do. All right, so hopefully that makes sense to you all and can help you with the external demand side of stress. Please put your hands up or type any questions in the question box if you've got any comments or questions. Otherwise, we're now going to look at internally generated anxiety. So internal anxiety happens really when we worry about the future. So anxiety comes out of a thought of something bad's going to happen, and I'll go into that in a moment. This is different from depression, which is generally worried about the past. This terrible thing happened, it was wrong, it shouldn't have happened, I wish it hadn't happened, I'm really upset that it happened, and I hate that it happened and I'm refusing to let it go. That's generally depression stories. Anxiety is much more about, it's going to be awful and I feel terrible about it. So the two different emotional states, similarities for sure, but generally one's past focused and one's future focused. So what creates the internal experience of the internal stress? Well, you create the internal stress when you imagine a negative outcome in the future that was often informed by a similar past situation that went badly. For example, let's say you got on stage, did a presentation, and nobody clapped at the end. So it didn't go very well. And you know that you have to make another presentation at work in a week's time. So you can very easily create the experience of anxiety around that by going, it's going to be terrible like it was last time. They're going to hate my presentation just like they did last time. That was awful last time. I felt so bad. It's going to be just as bad next time. And you're flipping between the past and the future. So you can scare yourself silly by doing that, right? It's pretty easy to create anxiety that way. So if you are scared of that negative outcome, so if you're scared of looking silly on stage, then you're going to create anxiety. If you also feel helpless to avoid that negative outcome, that's going to increase your anxiety a couple of notches. If you feel like it's going to be terrible, I can't stop it being terrible, you just feel really stuck around it, yeah? And the last stage is that if you are allergic, you know what I mean by allergic, is you cannot stand to feel the emotions, then if you imagine that your presentation is going to go really badly, how would you feel if it did? You'd probably feel really ashamed, embarrassed. You might feel inadequate. Now, if you're allergic to those feelings, if you can't stand feeling those feelings, you're going to be terrified of that situation, aren't you? You're going to be really worried about it happening. You're going to be really concerned about it, and you really are going to not want to do that activity. So, in order to deal with that feeling, can you see that the feeling is actually at the bottom of that structure? So you start off by focusing on an event. You tell yourself negative stories about it. You become scared of the event. You feel like you can't stop it, and you know that when it happens, it's going to be awful, and you're going to feel terrible, and you hate that feeling. You're really stuck, and that could very easily keep you up at night and running to the fridge to eat chocolate biscuits every 5 minutes. So if that happens, you can ask yourself a few questions. So what is that fear? What is that fear? Get really clear on it. Well, in this example, it could be, I'm afraid of being laughed at and looking like an idiot on stage. So it's a fear of looking stupid, or it's a fear of being inadequate. And what's the worst possible scenario? Well, it could be that everyone's sitting there yawning in the audience, or the worst possible scenario maybe is that they all just get up and walk out, I guess. That could be pretty bad. Now, what does that fear remind you of? So that fear of being laughed at, or that fear of feeling inadequate, what does it remind you of? And just do this little exercise with me right now. What does it remind you of around something that is stressful for you? And you may well have a little memory that pops into your mind about something earlier on in your life that reminds you of that experience. So it might be that perhaps you put your hand up at school to answer a question, and you put your little hand up and you said, 64, man. And the whole class burst out laughing at you because, of course, it was 23. You got it completely wrong. And that fear, when you think of going on stage in a week's time, that fear actually takes you right back in your subconscious to that horrible event of when you were, maybe 6 or 7. What's the first time you felt that emotion? It may be that time, it may be an earlier time as well. What's the first time you felt that emotion? So just notice where your mind goes with that one. And now that you're there, we're just going to go through a little way to de-stress using mindfulness. So just start to notice what thoughts are coming up around those early memories. Just notice the thoughts rather than getting caught up in the story of the event. Just notice the thoughts, just observe them as mental events, the thoughts. Watching those thoughts come and go, so there may be a sequence of thoughts around that event. Again, you just watch them come and watch them go. You can put them on a leaf if you want to. You can even put them on a cloud and watch the cloud float by. And then notice what emotions turn up in your body when you're aware of those thoughts. And what sensations you feel in your body when you're feeling those emotions. And just allow your awareness to float between the thoughts and the emotions and the sensations. So just noticing what's happening in your body. Are there sensations in your stomach? Is there in your shoulders? What exactly is happening in your body when you notice that? And then move your awareness to the emotions. What's the feeling like? You might want to label the feeling. So is it sadness? Is it inadequacy? Is it embarrassment? Is it discomfort? What is the emotion? Just label it. But don't go into judgment around it in terms of, oh, it's bad or it's good or I like it or I don't like it. Just notice what emotion it is and just let it be there. And then just move between the thoughts and then moving to the emotions and then moving to the body sensations. Very good. So just notice that you can watch all those sensations coming and going without going into the story and without going into the emotions taking over. You can just watch it happening. And now become aware of your breathing. And just notice the air going in and coming out. And notice your lungs expand and contract. Notice your chest rise and fall. Your ribs expand and contract. And just notice the rhythm of your breathing. Very good. Good. And then just bringing yourself back to your awareness around the room. Great. So what did you notice doing that? What did you notice about the original stress or about the past memory that it might have triggered? Did you notice that you could just watch those responses come and go without getting too caught up in them? Send me little messages. Let me know how you're doing. How was it for you? What did you experience? Yes, it does take practice, Nicola. It takes practice because so much of the time we tend to take it all very seriously and get very caught up in it. But could you get a sense, Nicola, that if you practice that you can watch the old stress response go by without needing to take it so seriously or get caught up in it? Okay, great. Martine felt more in control of your emotions associated. That's great. Good. Okay, Nicola, great. Keep practicing. Whenever you feel a little bit stressed, just give yourself, 2 minutes, 5 minutes just to sit down and rather focusing on trying to fix the situation, which is the first thing that we talked about, just come back to yourself, go inside, do that little exercise and see how you can reduce your stress level so that you can be more effective at actually solving the situation. Because if you're freaked out about the situation, it's really difficult to be constructive, it's difficult to be effective, and it's difficult to communicate well when you're really stressed. So it's very useful to be able to just take a few minutes, reduce your stress levels mindfully, and then go and deal with the situation in a much clearer way so that you can communicate better. Good. Okay, all right. Sarah's saying that she was able to notice the stress response just reducing as she went through that little exercise. Good. Okay, and become calmer. Good, great. Excellent. So here's another angle for you. I'd like you to have a think about which subpersonality is anxious about that particular situation. So here's the diagram of different subpersonalities. Now, what I mean by this is if you have a strong pusher, the pusher might get anxious when you're not doing enough. So, if you have really long lists and you've got through your day and you've still got 13 things on a list, your pusher might be saying, you've got to stay here all night and finish it. Or you're really not doing well enough. You've got to work harder and you need to come in early tomorrow morning and get it finished. So it might be the pusher. The pleaser can cause a lot of anxiety and stress as well. Because if the pleaser thinks that you're not pleasing somebody, if the pleaser realizes that someone's upset with you, it can create a lot of anxiety. If the protector thinks that you're not safe, if the protector realizes that you're feeling emotional, that you're vulnerable, that you're upset, the protector's going to get really freaked out because it's going to feel that it's not doing a good enough job and you're too vulnerable and it needs to get you out of that situation. That could cause anxiety. The inner critic. This one causes a huge amount of internal stress because the inner critic, remember, is the voice that says, you're not good enough, you're hopeless, you're useless, you're not pretty enough, you're not tall enough, you're not short enough, you're not fat enough, you're not thin enough. And it makes you feel really bad about yourself. So that can cause a lot of internal stress, a lot of internal anxiety, and can really put people into a state of overwhelm and misery and depression if you're not careful. Vulnerability, if you're stuck in being vulnerable, that of course is a stressful place to be because everything's scary. The world is terrifying sometimes, and you always feel like something's going to be upsetting or dangerous for you. If you have a responsible subpersonality and something goes wrong, you can get highly stressed because things should happen in the right way, and the same with the rule maker. If things aren't going according to plan, that can cause a lot of stress for people. The slob never gets stressed about anything. Um, the perfectionist, oh yeah, for people who have a strong perfectionist, it can be very upsetting to have a bit of dirt on the carpet or to have a plate still in the sink unwashed. So if you have a strong perfectionist, watch out for anxiety. And I've talked to many people in the past who get anxious, getting out of the car that their clothes might have got ruffled. And I've talked to people in the past who carry a big roll of sellotape in the car, wrap it around their hand backwards so that the sticky side out, and they brush themselves down with sticky tape before they get out of the car to make sure there's no dust showing. So you can imagine if you have a perfectionist like that and you're really worried that even a bit of dust is going to show and people might be judging you, you can see that life's going to be a bit stressful. So does that make sense, everyone? Now, what do you think, which subpersonality do you think is causing a lot of your stress? If you're someone who was saying that you experience stress very regularly. Ah, okay, so you have a loud inner critic, Nicola. Yeah, and do you realize can you see now how that causes a lot of the sense of anxiety and stress? Because what happens is when the critic's telling you off, you're trying to go, oh, I am hopeless? Oh no, that's terrible. I've got to fix it. How do I fix it? Well, I have to be taller or shorter or fatter or thinner or clever or do better at my job, and I can't because I don't know how to do it. So I'm stuck being useless. Do you see how that works? That can tie you up in knots. So the inner critic is something that you really need to learn how to let go of so that it doesn't run your life. Very important. Uh, Frida is saying the inner critic and the pleaser. You're right. Okay, good one. So you can also see how those two kind of sit together, don't they? That the inner critic, if you have a strong inner critic, it's very common that you also attract people who will criticize you. So people who will judge you. So there's this voice on the inside that says, oh, you're not good enough. And then people outside can start judging you and telling you you're not good enough externally, which feels terrible as well. And so then you're trying to fix it, and then the pusher gets involved trying to fix it and become better. And, it just creates a horrible cycle of stress. So Nicola's saying yes, and your boss is very critical. Yes, which sort of reflects that inner critic as well. Yep. Okay. Good. And she's a pusher, and maybe you develop your pusher as well, Nicola, to try and be better and stop your boss being critical, because that's what the pleaser wants to do as well, isn't it? It's very stressful trying to please people, isn't it? It's difficult. You have to do whatever they want, or you have to say yes all the time, or you have to bend over backwards or do things that you don't necessarily want to do, because it's really stressful and terrifying if someone's upset with you for these different subpersonalities. Good. Okay, great. Excellent. And someone else is saying perfectionists that they get really stressed when their work's, not up to scratch, or that the house isn't up to scratch. Yeah, totally. Some of the most uptight people I've ever met have had these majorly strong perfectionists, um, because it's horrible living with a strong perfectionist for some people, because it's just nothing is ever good enough. Nothing's ever right. Nothing's ever good enough. Wherever you turn, you can find fault with something. And so you're always trying to fix it and always trying to do it right. So it's not a relaxing way to live. So for those of you who recognize that one of those selves, and of course there are lots of other selves as well, that's just a summary of them. For those of you who recognize that those selves are causing stress and anxiety, can you see why I'm saying that it's optional? Because you can separate from those selves. You don't have to be doing those things once you learn how to deal with the emotions that are causing those personalities. What I mean by that is, if you have a strong pusher, the pusher is there to make sure that you're successful in the big picture. What's it helping you avoid? It's helping you avoid feeling like a failure. Same with the pusher. It's a similar but a different, sorry, the pleaser. It's a different story. So what's the pleaser trying to get you? It's trying to get you approval. What's it trying to make sure that you don't feel? You don't feel rejection or you don't feel inadequacy. All right. So the same with something like the rule maker. The rule maker is all about getting it right, doing the right thing, being right. And if you listen to what the rule maker is kind of saying under the surface, it's saying, I don't want to be criticized. I don't want to be judged. I don't want to be found lacking or to be inadequate, because then I'll get rejected and that'll hurt. So can you see how each of those stories, each of those subpersonalities or selves has a theme for you, a script for you, that really at the bottom of it is about you trying to avoid a feeling? It's the old emotional allergy story. Well, actually, really, if you look at it, every single person's problem that anyone's ever had, if you look deeply enough at it, is just someone trying to avoid a feeling. They don't want to feel rejected. They don't want to feel hurt. They don't want to feel abandoned. They don't want to feel inadequate. And therefore, there's whatever the situation is, they're trying to avoid or fix or control or, deal with that situation. But a lot of it all just comes down to how we can deal with our own emotions. So here's a way to help deal with the subpersonalities. Sandra's asking, is there somewhere to read about the subpersonalities? Yes, there is. The people who developed subpersonalities and the technique that is used to access them directly, which is called voice dialogue, their name is Hal and Sidra Stone. I'm going to type that in the text box. I can't talk and type at the same time, actually. I'll do my best. Hal and Sidra Stone. Okay. Hal and Sidra Stone, you should all see that in the text box, in the chat box. And they developed it in around the 70s. It's that they're PhD psychologists in America, and they started working with the different parts of each other. They're married, and they started actually facilitating or talking to the different parts of each other. And it came out of their marriage. It's a beautiful story. But they suddenly realized that there are these different subpersonalities that you can talk to who have completely different roles, different ideas, different thoughts for you. Like the pleaser wants something completely different for you. It wants you to be liked than the pusher does, which wants you to be successful. Or the slob wants you to relax. Or the inner critic wants you to be perfect. Do you see what I'm saying? So these subpersonalities, you can talk to them, you can converse with them directly, and it's fascinating because you get to find out from them when they turned up, what was happening in your life, when they turned up, why they turned up, what they're afraid of, what they're doing in your life, all these types of things. You can get really clear on it. So any of the books by Hal and Sidra Stone, there's a book called Embracing Ourselves. There's one called Embracing Each Other, which is about voice dialogue, the psychology of selves in relationships. So embracing each other's about relationship. They're fascinating books. There's also a DVD series on voice dialogue and the psychology of selves. And it's something that I talk about in my book as well. I train in voice dialogue, so I teach voice dialogue and this subpersonality process in workshops and with couples as well. So, and I always, work with this with clients. So it's a brilliant tool to understand. So if you want to do some more reading, look on the internet. But Hal and Sidra Stone are the main people to go to. Those books are lovely. So hopefully that helps Andy and everybody if you're interested in exploring that more. Okay, so a subpersonality release without doing voice dialogue or a particular process that would come out of knowing a bit more about it is just to do an inquiry. So let's say you've identified the subpersonality from the previous slide that you want to do this release with. In other words, get a bit more awareness around it. For some of you, it's the pleaser. Some of you, it's the pusher. Some of you, it's the inner critic or the perfectionist. I want you to ask, what outcome does that self want for you? What outcome does that self want for you? I've just given you some ideas, really. So the pleaser is being liked. The pusher is being successful. The perfectionist is being perfect. The rule maker is being right, etc. Just put any questions in here if you're not sure about anything or it's not making sense to you. How does it want you to be? What I mean by that is the perfectionist wants you to be perfect, maybe smartly dressed, maybe always friendly or always happy. The pleaser might want you to be always nice. It might be the pleaser wants you to be quiet, perhaps, or, sort of a bit mousy maybe, or, not to make a fuss or not to be too loud and take too much attention. Does that make sense, everyone? Sandy's saying, I feel I'm a bit of a few. Yeah, you all are a bit of a few. Okay, so you don't have to just narrow it down to one. You all have around probably 4 to 6 sub-personalities that you use most of the time. I just want you to just pick one for this exercise, and you can go away and do this exercise later. Sandy's picking the pleaser. Yeah, good one, Sandy. And then I want you to ask, what is it afraid? You can do this exercise writing down, and you can write down these questions and then write down your answers. And if you don't have any time while I'm speaking, you can just do it later on as some homework. So what is this self afraid will happen if you don't succeed at whatever it wants you to do? So it might be that it's afraid if you don't succeed at making people like you, that you'll be alone. Or it might be afraid that if you don't succeed at being successful, that you'll be a failure. Or if you don't succeed at being right, that you'll look stupid. Does that make sense, everyone? And then the last question is, how would that feel? So if that thing happened, how would you feel? You might feel inadequate if it's responsible self, or the perfectionist maybe. If it's the pleaser, you might feel rejected, or again, you might feel inadequate. If it's the inner critic, you'll probably definitely feel inadequate. If it's the pusher, you'll probably feel like a failure. So get really clear on how it would feel. Any questions, just let me know. And now with that feeling, just get a sense of that feeling. I want you to start to allow that feeling. If you can't feel it right now, just imagine feeling it. If you didn't do what that subpersonality wants you to do, just imagine how that would feel. And start to surrender to what is already happening. Surrender to the experience of that. Just allow the sensations of that feeling in your body, in your energy, whatever you're aware of. Just allow it. So I want you to welcome any of the feelings, all of the feelings. Just welcome them. Actually, kind of say, hey, you're welcome. You're welcome to be here. You're not a problem. It's okay. You're welcome. And I want you to really try hard to welcome your emotional allergies most. So if the feeling that you came up with was an emotional allergy, in other words, it's a feeling that you hate to feel, really get incredibly welcoming. See how welcoming you can be to that feeling, even if just for a moment. And guess what? I reckon that nearly all of you will actually survive it. I reckon all of you will survive it. Okay, and just notice if your arms fall off, or your legs fall off, or you turn green, or you die, or anything like that happens, or the sky falls in. So that as you sit there, just allowing and welcoming that feeling that maybe actually it's okay. So yeah, we're starting with an easy one. We're starting with kind of an imagined feeling. We're just doing an exercise. And I get that it's harder in reality when you have been triggered, but you've got to start somewhere, okay? So this idea of welcoming feelings is simply about the fact that they're already there. So you might as well stop trying to fight the fact that they've already turned up and get rid of them and just welcome what's already happening. So don't judge it. Don't judge any sensation as being good or bad. Just allow it. And don't make that feeling mean anything. So just because it feels spiky in your chest or it feels tight in your shoulders and you know that it's a feeling of shame or inadequacy, you don't have to make it mean anything. So the sensation doesn't mean that you're a hopeless woman. It doesn't mean that you're a terrible mother. I promise you the feeling doesn't mean that you're an inadequate human being. That doesn't mean anything. It's just a feeling. Just making sure you have clear mind. In other words, you don't listen to the stories. You have an open heart, which means you feel the feelings and you just observe it all. Good. Well done. All right. So did anyone die? Hands up, anyone who died. Good. We're all still correct and present. Could you all do that? Could you all just actually let a feeling be there and welcome it and realize that actually, perhaps you could even tolerate it? Could you all do that? Oh, good. Yay. Well done. Good job. Perfect. It's not that hard, huh? Okay, yes, it might be a bit of a stretch to welcome it if you don't like it. But here's the thing. It's there anyway. I like to say all these feelings are on the hard drive. Okay, so let's say you have a foot. Presumably you will have a foot, and if you stub your toe, it's going to hurt. It's painful. It's not pleasant. It hurts. It doesn't mean that you're going to chop your toe off. It doesn't mean that you're going to hate your toe. It doesn't mean that you're going to remove tables, every table or chair leg from your whole house and just sit on the floor for the rest of your life. You're going to be okay having a toe. You just understand that having a toe means that probably at some point in your life you're going to stub it. And you can accept that. So it's kind of like that, Nicola, when you get to welcome your toe, even though you might recognize that it might hurt you at some point. Or you welcome having a head. You're fond of it even. You want it to be there, even though you could get a headache at some point. Does that make sense? So it's about welcoming whatever's there because it's part of you. It's happening. It's on the hard drive. All these feelings are on the hard drive. You can't get rid of them. And to welcome your experience means that even if you don't like it, I'm not saying you have to love it or you have to be jumping up and down that you're feeling inadequate. Of course not. But to welcome it just means you're welcome to be here. It's okay. You know, this is part of me too. And I need to learn to kind of accept, if not love, all of me with all my feelings and all my experience. Do you get what I'm saying, Nicola? Hopefully that makes sense. And the others of you who found it a little bit harder to welcome it. Okay, great. Thank you. Perfect. This is another step up, just watching it's one level and then welcoming it's another level. And then actually loving the whole lot is a whole nother level. But it's just step by step. And the more you can sit there and observe, the easier it's going to be for you. All right. Now, I would love you to get ready for a little meditation that we're going to do. We're going to do the mountain meditation. And first of all, I'd love you to just shift your posture so that you're really sitting straight. Doesn't matter whether you're standing or sitting. wherever you are. Hopefully you're not driving, listen to this call, in which case just, kind of actually don't close your eyes and do this meditation if you're obviously somewhere not safe. But otherwise, for those of you who it's okay to, just close your eyes and sit up really straight, straighten your spine, have your feet on the floor, uncross your arms or your knees, and just become aware of the sense of your body being like a mountain, being like a lump of a body sitting there. I don't mean in a negative sense, lump. Your inner critics, if anyone of you reacted to that. Thanks, inner critic, for sharing. I mean a lump of a body, as in a big weight sitting there. It has gravity acting on it. Feel yourself as something solid, as something on the ground. Notice that as a mountain, you're completely natural. You're a natural part of the planet. As a mountain, you're solid. As a mountain, you're at ease with yourself, just being. No matter how strong the winds are that blow around the top of the mountain, or however dark the clouds are that swirl around the top of it, or however much it rains, the mountain just sits there, solid, unmoving, just being. So just sense your body, sense the spine in a natural curve as you sit up straight. Notice your head being lifted as though being suspended by a cord from above, letting go of any tension in your body, and just opening to your experience, watching your thoughts just as mental events, and turning towards your feelings. Rather than moving away from them, just turn towards your feelings and open. Imagine that you can open internally to any sense of discomfort in your body, in your emotions. Move towards rather than away from. And just scan your body just to notice any sign of tightness in your body, from your feet, up your legs, up your torso, down your arms, up your back and into your head. Just notice any place in your body where there's a sense of tightness, control, holding. Just notice. And now I want you to gather your attention to focus on the actual physical sensation of breathing. Just noticing it, first of all. So become aware that the breathing is happening all by itself. Just watching the breathing happening. Become aware of your stomach as it expands when you breathe in and relaxes when you breathe out. Starting now to follow the breath. So follow it as it comes in through your nose. Follow it down your trachea into your lungs. Feel your lungs expand. Your rib cage expand outwards. Your stomach expand outwards. And then just feel your stomach collapse, your ribs collapse inwards. The air come back out. Travel up through your trachea and out through your mouth or your nose. And I want you to take 3 full deep breaths with all of your attention on the sensations of the breath from beginning to end. Good. Now I want you to expand your awareness around your breathing so that as well as being aware of the breath, you can also become aware of the body as a whole. So rather than different parts of your body, become aware of your body as a whole. Notice your posture. Notice your facial expression from the inside. How is it to be in this mountain body, this body mountain, as a whole? And I want you now to maybe just experiment with breathing into any places that are tense or into any feelings that are challenging. Breathe into them on the in-breath and breathe out from them on the out-breath. And just feel a softening and releasing with each out-breath. And you might want to say to yourself, it is as it is. Just repeating, it is as it is. Just breathing into it, softening, releasing, accepting, and just noticing that it is as it is. Very good. And now, I want you to expand your awareness outside your body, almost into the room around you. Notice the spaciousness inside the mountain. Good. And go ahead now and open your eyes, bringing with you this expanded, spacious, accepting awareness of what is. And expand that now into whatever situation you're also in. Good. Well done. Okay, so how was it to be a mountain body? How was that for you? Okay, good. Calming. Great. Did you feel that you were able to get a sense of yourself as a whole, as something solid and unchanging, no matter what the feelings are going and whatever the thoughts are, that you also have this unmoving part of you? Great. Okay. So Nicola's feeling calmer, like I'm on the other side, like I'm on the inside, and the other things are happening on the outside, but I'm still. Yay! You got it. Perfect. Love it, Nicola. That's great. Because that's the case, actually. We tend to get so caught up in the whirlwind of life, but actually, this mountain experience is always there. There is always an aspect to your experience that is unchanging. Always. Because thoughts come and go, right? Emotions come and go, yeah? But there is some part of you that is always here, always steady, always solid, always real. And when you learn how to get in touch with that more and more, you can really gain an amazing amount of calmness and peace from living more from that space. Okay, Martine, great. So you felt very anxious at first and then much calmer in your emotions and felt much smaller. Okay, so that it just, you relaxed into it. Good. Good. Okay, well done. Lovely. So again, with all these little techniques I'm giving you, use the one that works best for you, but I do encourage you to practice them. So even if they're ones that are not necessarily so easy for you, practice that maybe for the week, and just give it a chance to see how you can deepen into that experience. And the mountain meditation in particular, for those of you who are very active if you have a strong pusher, if you're really on the go, 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 if you work really hard and do long hours, or your mind is really busy, this is a great little meditation to do, little mindfulness meditation of just finding that stillness inside, finding the part that never changes. And the more you can do that, the more you can start, as I said, become identified with that as that mountain experience rather than the mind and all the stuff that flows and changes around the mountain. Does that make sense, everyone? So do have a go at it, even if you find it more challenging, but also keep coming back to the processes and techniques that you find the easiest. Wonderful. Okay, good job, everyone. So stress-free living is really when you get to be fully expressed. So in summary, when you can open your heart and allow your feelings, and when you can clear your mind and just be mindful and let thoughts come and go and not get caught up in the stories, that's when you can express yourself fully and not have the stress of wanting it to be different, not having the stress of not living your life the way you want to. It's just a place of fulfillment and a place of feeling like you are fully expressing yourself in the world. It doesn't have to look a certain way. It doesn't have to be huge. You don't have to save the planet. You don't have to be mega successful or be mega rich or anything like that. It's totally up to you how you want to play the game of life. But it is important, I think, that you feel fully expressed. In other words, whatever it is that is inside you that wants to come out, comes out. And whether that's inventing a new recipe for scones, or whether that's being a fabulous mum or a great partner or a good, mother to a dog or whatever it is for you, or whether it's creating $1 billion business, it doesn't matter at all. But what does matter is that you are expressing yourself in the world. You're being creative. And what I mean by creative is every moment really is an opportunity for creating something. Creativity is really our life force. So if you're expressing your creativity, if you are expressing your joy and expressing your heart, I don't think that there's any more that you can really do in this life. It doesn't really matter about the material situation, but it does matter about you being you, unfettered and open and just giving all that you can to the world, because we need you. We want you. The world needs you. You're the only you that exists. You've got a unique gift to give to the world. And if you're finding that stress, situational stress or internal stress is getting in your way from being all that you can be, I really encourage you to please do whatever it takes to change those internal programs so that you can give to the world and we can get to experience the amazingness that's you. So, thank you very much for your attention tonight and for going through those little exercises. I'm very happy to stay behind and answer questions. I'm happy to open the line to you if you've got any questions and have a chat. So, more than happy to stay back as long as you need. So, otherwise, I will wrap up the call now, but I'll stay behind. So, just put your hand up or put a little question in if you want to chat to me. Otherwise, thank you so much. I hope you have an easy, calm, stress-free week. And I look forward to speaking with you next week on our last webinar in this series, next Thursday at 7. And until then, have a wonderful evening and enjoy your week. Do something lovely for yourself as well. Do something really nice. Treat yourself. And if you are stressed, and I know you all are because you've admitted to it, make sure that you put something really lovely into your week. Treat yourself with something special. All right, lovely ladies. Take care. Thanks. Bye.